The chrome catches sunlight like a mirror held up to the past. 10 Harley Davidsons sit parked outside Rusty's diner on a Sunday morning in October, engines ticking as they cool leather seats still warm from the ride in. The bikes line the gravel lot in a row so precise it looks intentional because it is. Everything these men do is intentional. Everything has meaning. The way they park, the way they walk, the way they claim the corner booth every single Sunday like they claimed it the first time 20 years ago and never gave it back. Inside, the air smells like coffee and bacon grease and something older than both. Wood that has absorbed 1,000 mornings. Vinyl that has held the weight of men who carry more than most people can see. The jukebox in the corner plays Johnny Cash, and the song is about a man who walked a line his whole life, and every man in that booth knows exactly what that means because they have all walked lines of their own. The Iron Riders Motorcycle Club. Northern California chapter has claimed the corner booth. The one with duct tape holding the vinyl together and coffee rings that will not scrub clean no matter how many times the waitress tries. There are 6 of them today. There are always at least 6. On good Sundays, there are more, but 6 is the number that matters. 6 is the number that has been constant through everything. Through the years and the miles and the losses that do not get talked about out loud, but live in the lines around their eyes, in the way certain songs make certain men go quiet without explanation. Jack Calloway sits at the head of the booth the way he always sits, back to the wall eyes on the door. He goes by iron has gone by iron since a night in Flagstaff 17 years ago when a situation that should have ended badly did not because of the way he held himself together when everything around him was coming apart. He is 58 years old and looks it the way mountains look their age, like the years added something instead of just taking. His hair has gone silver at the temples. The scar that runs from his left ear to his jaw is the color of old rope. His hands are wrapped around a coffee mug, and the knuckles are thick, the skin across them pale where it's stretched too tight over bone that has been broken more than once. On his right forearm, spread across the inside of his wrist and climbing toward the elbow, is a tattoo he has had since he was 23 years old. A death's head with wings spread wide. The ink has settled into his skin so deep now that it looks less like a tattoo and more like something he was born with. Rex Haynes sits across from him, the man they call Boulder, and the name fits in every possible way. He is enormous, not just tall but wide-built, like something that was assembled rather than born, shoulders that make the booth feel small, hands that could palm a basketball with room to spare. He has a beard that touches his chest and eyes the color of creek water in summer. Unexpectedly pale, unexpectedly gentle. He is arguing about something with Eddie Morrow, who goes by Blackjack, a lean and wiry man with a quick mouth and tattoos running up both forearms like sleeves made of stories. Blackjack is the kind of man who remembers everything, every joke, every insult, every moment worth keeping, and he holds on to those memories the way some men hold on to money, carefully, deliberately knowing their value. Cal Pruitt, who everyone calls Wrench, sits with a cup of coffee he has not touched, in a small notebook open in front of him, sketching something mechanical in pencil. He does this every Sunday, has done it for years. Nobody asks what he is working on anymore because the answers are always interesting and sometimes brilliant, and occasionally turn into things that get installed on motorcycles that then run better than they have any right to. Wrench has a degree in mechanical engineering from Cal Poly that exactly none of the people who know him from the road would guess, and he keeps it that way because he likes the surprise. Vincent Dade sits at the end of the booth nearest the window, looking out at the parking lot and the bikes and the October sky beyond. He goes by Smoke, and the name suits him in a way that is hard to explain precisely. He is present, but somehow not fully there, like smoke, visible, but intangible, moving in ways you cannot quite predict. He does not talk much. He never has. But the men at this table have learned over many years that when Smoke says something, it means something. And the silence between his words is not emptiness, but weight. He is watching the parking lot with the particular stillness of a man who has been waiting for something without being able to name what it is. They are laughing about a poker game from the night before. Boulder lost $300, and the details of how are apparently both humiliating and hilarious. And Blackjack is not going to let it go. Not today, not next Sunday, not for the foreseeable future, because that is what Blackjack does with material this good. The laughter rolls through the diner, deep and unself-conscious, the kind that comes from men who have seen enough darkness together that light, when it comes, feels like something worth filling up on. Then the bell above the door chimes, and everything stops. Not loudly, not dramatically. It stops the way a record stops when someone lifts the needle suddenly and completely, the absence of sound more startling than the sound itself. She is maybe 9 years old. Perhaps 10, but probably 9, the kind of age that still shows in the softness of the face, even when everything else about the child is trying very hard to be older than it is. Her hair is brown and pulled into a ponytail that has come most of the way, loose strands falling across her face that she does not bother to push away. Her sneakers have holes in the toe, the left one worse than the right. The kind of holes that come from walking too much and replacing too little. Her jeans are too short for her legs, showing ankles that are scraped and bruised with the particular markings of a child who moves through the world without enough padding between herself and it. Her jacket is thin, a blue windbreaker that was probably never warm enough, even when it was new, worn at the elbows. Now a small patch sewn onto the left shoulder in a fabric that does not quite match, sewn with careful stitches that somebody took their time with. But it is her eyes that stop the room. Dark eyes, steady eyes, eyes that belong to someone who has already learned at whatever age she is that the world is not a place that gives things freely that it takes, and that the only question worth asking is how you carry what it takes from you. There is no fear in those eyes. There is wariness, which is different. Fear flinches, wariness watches. She stands in the doorway for a moment, framed by the October light coming in behind her, and she scans the room the way someone scans a room when they are looking for something they are not completely certain exists. Her gaze moves across the counter, across the other tables, across the faces of people who have already gone back to their eggs and their newspapers. Then her gaze reaches the corner booth and it stops. She takes one step forward, then another. Her hands are shaking, but her jaw is set, and it is the jaw that tells you what she is made of. She walks across the diner with the deliberate pace of someone who has rehearsed this, who has played it out in her head so many times that she is not going to let her body betray her. Now, not when she has come this far, not when there is no going back. She stops 3 feet from the end of the table, 3 feet from Iron, and then she looks at his arm. His right arm resting on the table, the inside of his forearm facing up. The tattoo clear in the morning light. The death's head with wings spread wide. She swallows once. Her throat works like the words are difficult to get past something. Then she lifts her own right hand and points to a spot on her small wrist. A spot where there is no tattoo, but where she is indicating precisely the location of his. And she says in a voice that is doing everything it can to sound steady and almost succeeds, "My father had the same tattoo. Same." The words land the way certain words land, not loudly, not with fanfare, but with the specific gravity of something that changes the room simply by existing in it. Silence. Not the comfortable silence of men who know each other well. The other kind. The kind that has texture. The kind you can feel against your skin. Boulder's coffee cup freezes halfway to his lips. His eyes go wide and the cup shakes in his hand, coffee sloshing over the rim onto the table, and he does not notice, does not look down, keeps his eyes on the girl. Wrench closes his notebook. Blackjack stops mid-sentence, mouth still slightly open, the punchline of whatever story he was telling evaporating into the air between them. Smoke turns from the window. Iron leans forward slowly, just slightly, just enough. His dark eyes narrow, not with threat, not with suspicion, but with the careful attention of a man who has just heard something that requires every part of him to be present. He looks at the girl. He looks at the way she is standing, the way her small hands have balled into fists at her sides, the way her fingernails are digging into her palms, because she needs something to hold on to right now, and this is what she has. His voice when it comes is low, careful. the voice of a man who understands that whatever he says next matters. What's your name, kid? Lily. A beat. Lily Cole. The name moves through the booth like weather. Boulder sets his coffee cup down, sets it down with a precision that is at odds with the size of his hands, the kind of precision that comes from needing very badly to do something slowly. His jaw tightens. His pale eyes go somewhere far away for just a moment and then come back. Iron's face does not change much, a man who has spent decades keeping his face from changing much. But something happens around his eyes. The lines there deepen. The lids lower just slightly. His jaw tightens and releases and tightens again. He looks at the other men, one by one. Boulder, Wrench, Blackjack, Smoke. Each of them looks back, and in that exchange, without a single word spoken, the entire weight of a shared history passes between them like current through a wire. Then Iron looks back at Lily Cole. Who was your father? She swallows again. Her chin is trembling now, just slightly, and she is fighting it. You can see her fighting it, can see the effort it cost her to keep her face from doing what it wants to do. Her hands tighten against her palms. His name was Daniel Cole. A pause so small it is almost not there. Everyone called him Ghost. The diner might as well have caught fire. Boulder stands up so fast his chair scrapes the linoleum with a sound like something tearing. He stands there with his enormous hands at his sides, and his face that has scared people in 3 states without trying, is doing something it almost never does. It is falling apart, just slightly, just around the edges. Wrench pushes his notebook away from him. His hand goes flat on the table like he needs to feel something solid. Blackjack shakes his head slowly over and over, the way a man shakes his head when he is hearing something his brain is refusing to fully process. Smoke closes his eyes, his shoulders drop, and for just a moment in the morning light coming through the window, he looks like he has aged 10 years in 10 seconds. And Iron sits very still. The stillness of a man who is doing the most difficult thing a man can do, which is feel something enormous in a public place and not let it unmoor him completely. Ghost. The word surfaces in him like something rising from deep water. Ghost. Daniel Cole. The man with the quick hands and the quicker laugh and the death's head tattoo on his forearm that matched Iron's own. The man who had saved his life twice and left without saying goodbye, and who Iron had spent 10 years being furious at, and 7 more years trying to understand, and 3 more years simply missing the way you miss something you never properly appreciated until it was already gone. He stands slowly the way men his age stand when they have been sitting still too long, and the body makes its objections known. He walks around the table until he is in front of Lily Cole, and then he does something that surprises even him. He kneels down, 6 feet and 2 inches of iron and scar tissue, and 40 years of hard road kneeling in a diner on a Sunday morning in October, so that his eyes are level with the eyes of a 9-year-old girl in a too-thin jacket with holes in her shoes. Your dad, he says, and his voice breaks on the second word just slightly, the way old metal sounds when it shifts, was one of the best men I ever knew. Lily's chin is doing the thing she has been fighting, and she stops fighting it. You knew him. Iron almost laughs, but what comes out is something rawer than a laugh. Something that has been waiting a long time to come out. Knew him. Kid, he saved my life twice. Once in a bar outside Reno when a man came up behind me with a blade, and Ghost saw it half a second before it would have been too late. Went through a plate glass window with the guy. Did not even think about it. Just moved. He pauses. His thumb runs across the back of his own hand, an unconscious gesture. And once on Highway 1 up north of Fort Bragg, I went down in a turned gravel on the asphalt where it should not have been. I was bleeding out on the shoulder of the road, and Ghost made a tourniquet from his own belt and kept me alive until the ambulance got there. Stayed with me through surgery. 3 days in that hospital. Did not leave once. Lily is looking at him with those dark eyes, and in them he can see something he recognizes. He has seen it in mirrors in the early years before he learned to look away. the specific grief of someone who loved a person they did not get enough time with. He was my brother, Iron says, not by blood maybe, but by everything that matters. Boulder has moved closer now, his boots heavy on the floor, and his voice when he speaks is rough in a way that has nothing to do with his size. We all rode with Ghost, 15 years ago, maybe more, before he stops, looks at Iron. Lily wipes her eyes with the back of her hand, leaving a smudge of something across her cheek. And in the gesture, she looks so entirely like a child, all the forced composure falling away for just that moment. And then she straightens her spine again, and she is back. He told me about you, she says, not by name. He said there were men he rode with, men who were his brothers. He said it was the best thing that ever happened to him, and also the thing that cost him the most. She looks at Iron directly. He said when he found out about me, he knew he had to choose. Iron nods, slowly, like a man receiving something he has been waiting a long time for. Why did he leave? Her voice is small now, not weak, small the way something becomes small when it matters too much to be said loudly. He never told me the whole story, just said he had to. The men exchange a look above her head. Years and miles and decisions pass between them in that look. It is Smoke who speaks. He has moved from the window to stand near the end of the booth, and his voice is quiet in the way that forces people to lean in. Your mom. He left because of your mom, and because of you. Lily blinks. Me, I was not even born. No, Smoke says. But you were coming. 8, 9 weeks along when Ghost found out. And he sat with it for a while, sat with what it meant, sat with what kind of life a child would have if her father kept riding the way he was riding. He pauses. He loved this life, the road, the brotherhood, the way it felt to be part of something most people never get close to. But he loved your mom more, and he knew something about himself that took courage to know. He knew if he stayed, there would come a day when he would not come home. So he chose differently, moved to Oregon, started over, built something. The words settle over the diner like weather settling over open land. Outside, a truck passes on the road. The jukebox changes songs. Somewhere in the kitchen, something sizzles on the griddle. He did not regret it. Lily says it like a statement, but it comes out like a question, like she needs to hear someone else confirm it. Even at the end, when he was sick and he could not get out of bed and the morphine made him confused, he told me leaving was the only reason he got to be my dad. He said you all taught him what loyalty meant. That is why he could be loyal to us. Iron's eyes are wet. He does not wipe them. Men like him do not cry in diners on Sunday mornings except when they do. And this is one of those times, and he is not ashamed of it. That is Ghost, he thinks. That is exactly Ghost. How did you find us, he asks. Lily reaches into the pocket of her too-thin jacket and pulls out a photograph. It is old, faded at the edges, a water stain in one corner that has blurred the colors there to something soft and indistinct. But the image is clear enough. A group of men standing in front of their bikes outside a bar somewhere, young and wild, and grinning the invincibility of men who have not yet been taught that they are not. Ghost is in the middle arm thrown around Iron's shoulders, a beer in his other hand. Head thrown back mid-laugh. There is a cigarette tucked behind his ear. She turns the photograph over. On the back in handwriting that is uneven and thin, the letters slightly shaky but deliberate, each one formed with care. If you ever need help, find them. Rusty's Diner, every Sunday. They are family. They will remember. Love, Dad. Iron takes the photograph like it is made of something breakable. His thumb traces the edge of it. He looks at the image for a long time without speaking. Then he looks up at Lily. He wrote that 3 weeks before he died, she says. He could barely hold the pen, but he wanted me to have it, wanted me to know where to go. Iron looks at his brothers, Boulder, Wrench, Blackjack, Smoke. Nobody needs to say anything. Then Smoke reaches into his wallet. He does it slowly, carefully, with the particular deliberateness of a man who has been waiting a long time to do exactly this thing. From behind an old receipt and a folded piece of paper, he draws out a photograph of his own, smaller than Lily's, more faded. The image is of two men standing beside a gas pump at a desert filling station somewhere in Nevada, the landscape behind them flat and bleached and enormous. One of the men is Ghost, younger than in Lily's photo, grinning in a way that takes up his whole face. The other man is Smoke, and he is smiling too, which is not something the men at this table have seen often. Smoke holds the photograph out to Lily. She takes it carefully, looks at it, looks up at him. He turns it over. On the back in Ghost's handwriting, the same careful letters. Smoke, if my girl ever finds her way to you, you know what to do. Keep the promise. Lily looks at the photograph. She looks at the quality of it, the particular fading that comes from years rather than months, and she understands that this was not taken recently. Ghost had gone back to find Smoke not long after leaving the road, before Lily was old enough to remember anything, before the years had accumulated into the life she knew. He had made a point of it, had handed Smoke this photograph in person, and said what needed saying while he still could long before the end. Long before anyone knew the end was coming. She looks up at Smoke with those old eyes. You knew I would come. He nods, once. I hoped you would not need to, he says. But I knew. The men at the table understand what this means. Ghost had trusted Smoke with the thing he cared about most. Trusted him years before the diagnosis, years before the end. Ghost had planned this the way he planned everything important, quietly and completely, leaving nothing to chance that he could arrange in advance. That was Ghost. Always thinking ahead, always making sure the people he loved had somewhere to go. You came here for help. Iron says it quietly. Lily nods and something in her posture shifts. The thing she has been holding herself together around the rigid core of determination that walked her through that door and across that diner floor and kept her voice steady when it wanted to break. That thing releases just slightly like a fist unclenching. She is still standing. She still has the jaw. But the weight of what she has been carrying is visible now, settling around her shoulders. My mom is sick. Her voice has lost some of its steadiness. Not all of it, just some. Really sick. The doctors call it pulmonary fibrosis. Her lungs are scarring from the inside. She cannot breathe right. It gets worse. A pause. She needs surgery and medication to slow it down. It costs a lot of money, and we do not have insurance because she lost her job when she got too sick to work. And our landlord, her voice catches. She tries again. Our landlord wants to throw us out. We are 3 months behind on rent. He comes to the door and yells. He says things. And last week She stops, swallows. He stopped me in the hallway when I was coming home from school. He got close to me, called us trash. She says it the way you say a word you know is wrong but are repeating as evidence. I am 9 years old. The temperature in the corner booth drops approximately 10 degrees. Boulder's hands close into fists on the table. Slowly, completely. His knuckles go white. Wrench's jaw tightens until the muscle in his cheek jumps. Blackjack goes very still in a way that is somehow more alarming than movement. Smoke's eyes go dark and distant, the storm cloud color of them deepening. Iron holds up one hand slightly and the room steadies. What is his name? Iron asks. His voice is level, very level. The kind of level that takes effort. Gary Stokes. He owns the whole building. Iron nods. He sets Ghost's photograph on the table between them, carefully face up. He looks at it for just a moment. Then he looks at Lily. You did the right thing coming here. His voice is not loud, not theatrical. It is simply certain, the way bedrock is certain, the way things are certain when they have been true for a very long time. Ghost was our brother, not by blood, by everything else. That makes you family, Lily. And we do not let family face things alone, not while we are breathing. She looks at him. Something moves through her face, something fragile and new. The particular expression of someone who has been holding everything together alone for so long that being told they do not have to is almost too much to process. It looks like relief. It looks like it might also be the beginning of tears, real ones, not the ones she has been fighting, but something deeper and older, the kind that have been waiting since before she walked through that door. We will need to see your mom, Boulder says, his voice softer than his size suggests possible. And we will need to have a conversation with Mr. Stokes. There is nothing in his tone that sounds like a threat, but there is nothing in his tone that sounds like a question either. Lily wipes her eyes with her sleeve. She nods. Iron stands and pulls on his jacket. He looks at his brothers, and the look he gives them is simple and clear, and carries everything it needs to. Boulder is already moving. Wrench closes his notebook and slides it into his pocket. Blackjack leaves money on the table for the coffee. Smoke picks up Ghost's photograph and holds it out to Lily. She takes it and puts it back inside her jacket against her chest. They walk out together, Lily and the six men, through the diner and out into the October morning, where 10 Harleys sit waiting in a row. The engines start one by one, each ignition a separate voice, and the sound builds into something that the people watching from inside the diner feel in their chests more than they hear with their ears. Lily climbs into Iron's truck. She buckles her seatbelt and holds the photograph through the fabric of her jacket, holding it the way you hold something you are afraid to lose. The drive to the apartment complex on the eastern edge of Reading takes 20 minutes. It is a part of the city where the paint peels from the buildings in long strips, and the streetlights work about half the time, and the sounds at night are not the sounds of a neighborhood at peace with itself. The parking lot has cracked asphalt, and two shopping carts rusting near the dumpsters, and a chain-link fence with a gate that does not latch properly. They park in a line, the bikes in a row along the curb chrome catching the midday sun. When the men dismount, people in the building look out from behind curtains. A woman on the second-floor balcony watches without moving. A teenage boy near the entrance takes 3 steps back and finds reasons to be somewhere else. Lily leads them up the exterior stairs. The railing wobbles. The concrete is stained in long, dark lines where water has been running off the roof incorrectly for years. Second floor. The hallway smells of mold and something chemical and the particular staleness of enclosed spaces that do not get enough air. Apartment 214. The door is hollow core, the kind that costs the least, with a dent in the lower panel that is shaped like someone's foot. From inside, even standing in the hallway, you can hear it, soft and rhythmic and wet. Coughing, the kind that makes your own lungs ache in sympathy. Lily knocks. "Mom, it is me." A pause, the coughing subsides temporarily. Footsteps, the sound of a latch, the door opens. Ruth Cole is in her mid-30s and looks older in the way that illness ages people, not with the additions that time usually brings, but with subtractions. She is pale in a way that has nothing to do with complexion and everything to do with a body working too hard at the wrong things. Her hair is dark, like Lily's pulled back in a loose bun. There are shadows under her green eyes that have been there long enough to look permanent. She is wearing sweatpants and a flannel shirt, and there is a thin plastic tube running from a portable oxygen concentrator on the floor to her nostrils, a constant small hiss that fills the quiet moments. She was beautiful. You can see it in the structure of her face, the high cheekbones, the line of her jaw, the shape of her mouth. She is still beautiful if you know how to look at what is underneath the illness. But the illness is very present right now, and it has taken a great deal. She sees Lily first. Relief crosses her face, clean and immediate, a mother's reflex. Then she sees the men behind her daughter, and the relief turns to something else. She takes a step back. Her hand grips the door frame. "Lily, what? Mom!" Lily steps forward and her voice is steady again, the composure she had let slip in the diner reassembled and back in place. "They knew Dad." Ruth Cole goes still. The kind of still that is different from just not moving. The kind that happens when the entire body decides that it needs a moment to process something before it can proceed. Her eyes move to Iron, to his face, then to his forearm, to the tattoo visible below his rolled sleeve. Her hand goes to her mouth. "Daniel," she says. It is barely a word. It is the sound of a name that has lived inside someone for a very long time. Iron takes his sunglasses off. His eyes are dark and steady and kind. Mrs. Cole, my name is Jack Calloway. Everyone calls me Iron. I rode with your husband for 15 years. He was my brother. He pauses. He saved my life more than once. And your daughter came to find us because she knew, because Ghost told her that if she ever needed help, we would be there. Another pause. We are here. Ruth looks at Lily, then back at Iron, then at the other men arranged in the hallway behind him. These large, scarred, tattooed men in leather vests, standing in the muted light of a second-floor hallway in a rundown building, and something moves across her face that is complicated and human and takes a moment to fully arrive. She starts to cry. Not the restrained kind, not the polished kind. The kind that comes from holding everything in for too long, from nights spent adding numbers that do not add up, from watching your daughter come home with holes in her shoes, and knowing you cannot fix them, from coughing until you see spots, and wondering in the quiet afterward how much longer you have to figure this out. I told her not to, Ruth says, her voice breaking on the words. I told her not to bother anyone. I told her we would figure it out. Mom. Lily moves to her side and takes her hand. They are not anyone, Lily says, and her voice for just this moment belongs to someone much older than 9. They are family. Dad said so. Iron steps inside. The apartment is small, clean in the way that speaks of pride maintained under difficult circumstances. Surfaces wiped down, dishes put away, the floor swept. But the smallness of it is stark, the single lamp providing most of the light, the card table in the corner stacked with papers and envelopes with red lettering on the outside. A mattress on the floor of what should be the living room, neatly made a stuffed bear sitting at the pillow, worn and loved. The bedroom is Ruth's. Lily sleeps here in the main room and has been sleeping here for however long the rent fell behind and the world started closing in. Boulder walks in behind Iron and takes in the room with one slow look and says nothing. But his jaw is tight and his eyes are hard in the way they get when he is confronting something that makes him angry in a deep and quiet place. Wrench is already on his phone, stepping to the side, texting someone. The chapter's treasurer, probably. Numbers, logistics, solutions. Blackjack sits down on the floor next to where Lily is settled beside the door. Just sits right down on the floor without ceremony, his back against the wall, and says quietly, "You holding up okay, kid?" Lily nods, but the nod is honest rather than brave. She is holding up because she has no alternative. That is not the same as okay. Iron sits across from Ruth at the card table. She sinks into her chair like the last of whatever has been keeping her upright has finally run out, and she can let the chair do the work. The oxygen concentrator hisses. Outside somewhere in the building, a door slams. How long, Iron asks. 6 months since the diagnosis. Her voice has recovered some of its composure. Started as a cough last winter. Thought it was bronchitis, then pneumonia. Then they did a CT scan and found the scarring. She stops. Her hand goes to her chest in an unconscious gesture, fingers splayed over her sternum. It progresses. The doctor says there is a procedure that could help. A specialist in San Francisco has a new surgical approach. After that, medication to slow the progression. But the total cost, she swallows, $50,000, maybe more. And I lost my job 3 months ago when I could not do the shifts anymore. We are on disability and it is not enough. And the landlord, she looks at Lily, her face doing something careful. He has been making things difficult. Iron's voice is even. What is your landlord's name? Gary Stokes. He owns this building. He has been coming by yelling through the door about the rent. Last week She stops. She looks at Lily and something passes between them, and Ruth looks back at Iron and says quietly and with great control, "He cornered my daughter in the hallway. She is 9 years old." The room has a different quality to it now. Iron stands. He does not say anything immediately. He looks at Boulder, who gives one small nod. He looks at Smoke, who is standing near the window, already looking at something outside in the parking lot below. Then he looks at Ruth. "We are going to take care of everything," he says. "The medical bills, the rent, all of it. But first we are going to pay Mr. Stokes a visit." Ruth shakes her head. Her eyes are filling again. "I cannot let you do this. I cannot accept this kind of help. I do not." "You are not letting us do anything." The firmness in his voice is kind. That is the specific quality of it, the thing that makes it different from a command. It is certain and it is kind, both things at once. "Ghost was our brother. He chose you and Lily. He built his life around keeping you safe, and when he could not do it anymore, he left you a roadmap to find us. He trusted us with the most important thing he had." He pauses. "We do not get to refuse that. None of us do. You understand." Ruth nods. She presses her fingers to her mouth and she nods. From the corner of the room, Lily watches Iron, and on her face, for the first time since she walked into Rusty's diner that morning, is something that is not wariness or determination or the forced composure of someone performing courage. It is something closer to peace. 20 minutes later, Iron and Boulder walk into the leasing office on the ground floor of the building. Gary Stokes is at his desk, a man in his 50s with thinning hair, slicked flat, and a gut that strains the buttons of his shirt. He has the particular look of a man who has spent his life exercising power over people who cannot fight back a small man with small power, and it has shaped him the way weather shapes soft stone, into something smooth and self-satisfied and fundamentally diminished. He looks up when the door opens. He looks at Iron and Boulder filling the doorway. He does not look self-satisfied anymore. Iron crosses the room and sets a folded envelope on the desk. $1,500, he says. "That is 3 months' rent for apartment 214 plus 100 extra for your trouble." He says the last part the way you say something you do not mean. "Count it." Stokes opens the envelope with hands that are not entirely steady. He counts the bills. He nods. "Here is what happens next," Iron says. He sits in the chair across the desk without being invited, the way a man sits when the room already belongs to him, regardless of whose name is on the lease. "You write paid in full on Ruth Cole's account. Today. You never contact her again. You never go near her daughter again. If I hear from anyone that you have been harassing tenants in this building, particularly tenants who are sick or struggling, or both, I will come back here." And the next conversation will not start with an envelope of cash. He lets that land. Stokes nods, multiple times, his chin moving up and down in a way that is almost involuntary. Boulder steps to the desk and picks up a pen, holds it out. Stokes takes it and writes paid in full on Ruth Cole's file. Signs it. His signature is shaky but legible. Iron takes the paper, folds it, puts it in his vest pocket. He stands. "One more thing," he says. He is at the door now, hand on the frame, and he turns back to look at Stokes with an expression that is not threatening in any technical sense, but contains within it the clear suggestion of what he is capable of when motivated. "The little girl in 214, 9 years old. She walked into a diner this morning and asked 6 men she had never met for help. She did it alone, because she had nowhere else to go." He pauses. Remember what that took. Next time you are thinking about making someone's hard life harder, remember what it cost a 9-year-old girl to do what she had to do today, and ask yourself what that says about you. He walks out. Boulder follows. Gary Stokes sits at his desk in his office for a long time after that. The paid in full notation on Ruth Cole's file sits in front of him. He does not get up for almost an hour. Upstairs in apartment 214. Ruth is sitting on her small couch with Lily pressed close against her side, and for the first time in months, she is not thinking about the bills on the card table, or the oxygen concentrator hissing beside the door, or the sound of Gary Stokes' voice yelling through the hollow core door. She is thinking about her husband, about Daniel Cole, who left everything he knew because she was carrying their daughter, and he knew what kind of man he needed to be, who built a quiet life in Oregon and loved them both as hard as he could until his lungs could not pull enough air, and then he sat down with a pen he could barely hold and wrote instructions to a group of men in a California diner so that his girls would never be alone. She thinks about the fact that he knew. He knew this day might come, that she might need help she could not ask for from the ordinary world, and he had left them a door to knock on. The door opens and Iron and Boulder come back in. Iron looks at Ruth and nods once. She closes her eyes and exhales. Lily leans into her mother's shoulder. Outside, the October light is going golden and long across the cracked parking lot, catching the chrome of the bikes parked at the curb, and for a moment, it looks like something else entirely. Like the past made visible. Like a promise kept. That evening, as the sun drops behind the ridge to the west, and the air goes cold in the way California air does in October, dropping fast and clean, Iron sits in his truck outside the apartment building. The others have gone back to the clubhouse to make calls, to move money, to start the machinery that these men move quietly when they need to move it. He sits with the engine idling and the heater running and Ghost's photograph in his hand. He looks at the young man in the photograph for a long time. The thrown back head, the beer in one hand, the cigarette behind the ear, the absolute certainty and the grin of a man who believes he is invincible and has not yet been given reason to think otherwise. Iron had been angry at Ghost for 10 years, had felt the leaving as abandonment, as a fracture in the brotherhood that he had told himself was unforgivable. Had said things about Ghost's departure in the years after that he was not proud of now. Had built the anger into a story he told himself about loyalty and obligation and what it meant to stay. And then a 9-year-old girl in a too-thin jacket had walked into his diner on a Sunday morning and pointed to his tattoo and said, "My father had the same one." And every piece of the story Iron had been telling himself for a decade had shifted quietly and completely into a different shape. Ghost had not left the brotherhood. Ghost had taken the brotherhood home. Had taken everything it meant, the loyalty and the showing up and the refusal to let his people face things alone, and he had carried it into a different life and given it to Ruth and to Lily, and he had made sure, even at the end, even when the pen was hard to hold, that the thread connecting them to these men was still intact. You cannot be angry at a man for that. Iron puts the photograph in his vest pocket next to the paid-in-full receipt. He sits there in the dark for another few minutes. Then he pulls out his phone and makes a call. "Get everyone together," he says when the call connects. "We have got work to do." He puts the truck in gear. Above the apartment building, the last of the October light fades from the sky, and the first stars appear faint and distant and permanent, the way certain things are permanent, regardless of whether you are looking at them or not. Upstairs in apartment 214, Lily Cole lies on her mattress on the floor with her stuff bare and listens to her mother's breathing, the rise and fall of it, the occasional catch that makes her own chest tighten, and she holds the photograph in both hands against her chest. She thinks about her father. She thinks about the men in the diner, the way Iron's voice had cracked on that first sentence, the way Boulder had stood up so fast his chair scraped the floor, the way Smoke had produced the photograph from his wallet without hesitation, like he had been reaching for it in his mind for years, and his hand already knew the way. They remembered. He told her they would, and they did. Her father, who she will never stop missing, who left her a roadmap written with a shaking hand 3 weeks before the end, had known exactly who these men were, had known what they would do, had known it the way you know things that have been proven over years and miles and moments of crisis. He had trusted them with her, and they had not let him down. Lily closes her eyes. In the corner of the room, the oxygen concentrator hisses its small, steady sound, and somewhere outside the building, a dog barks twice and goes quiet, and the October night settles over Redding like something careful, like something that knows what is sleeping and means to keep it safe. The call goes out that night, not through any formal channel, not through anything that could be written down or traced or explained to someone who had not spent years understanding how these networks operate. Iron makes 4 calls from his truck in the parking lot of Ruth Cole's apartment building, and those 4 calls become 12. And by midnight, there are men across 3 chapters who know what is needed and why and are already moving. This is what brotherhood looks like when it is not theoretical. $50,000, maybe more. The surgeon in San Francisco, a specialist named Dr. Harlan Webb, who has developed a procedure for pulmonary fibrosis that has changed outcomes in ways that standard treatment does not work for free. He works for people who can pay, and occasionally rarely for people who are brought to him by the right combination of circumstances. Iron knows a man who knows Webb, a favor owed from years ago, the kind of favor that sits in a ledger nobody writes down but everyone remembers. He makes that call last after midnight, sitting at the long table in the clubhouse with a cup of coffee going cold in front of him. The conversation is short. Webb will take the case. In 36 hours, they have what they need. Not just the money, though. The money comes together faster than Iron had let himself hope. Chapter funds and personal contributions and debts called in across 3 states. Men who have never met Ruth Cole writing checks because Iron asked and because Ghost's name still means something in this world. They have the appointment with Webb scheduled for 2 weeks out at a hospital in San Francisco. They have a plan. But first they have the morning after, which belongs to something quieter and harder and more necessary than logistics. Iron goes back to the apartment on a Tuesday with Boulder and Wrench, and they sit with Ruth at the card table while Lily is at school, and they go through everything. The medical bills in their red envelopes, the disability paperwork, the prescription costs, and the oxygen equipment rental, and the pile of things she has been managing alone with the particular stoic efficiency of someone who has accepted that the situation is bad, but has refused to accept that it is impossible. She has been fighting this with the resources of a single sick woman in a bad apartment, and she has been losing slowly, and she has known it, and she has kept going anyway. Iron watches her go through the papers, and he thinks about Ghost, about what it must have taken for a man like that to sit in a hospital room for 3 days without leaving, and he thinks he understands it better now. Ghost had not stayed because it was easy. Ghost had stayed because that was who he was beneath all the leather and the ink and the myth of it. The man who stayed. And he had married a woman who had that same quality, the staying quality, the kind that does not announce itself. Wrench takes the billing statements and makes calls. He is precise and methodical and patient in a way that surprises people who only know him from the road, and he argues with insurance representatives in billing departments and hospital administrators with the calm tenacity of an engineer who has encountered problems before and knows that every problem has a solution if you are willing to look at it long enough. He gets 2 of the bills reduced significantly. He finds a prescription assistance program that covers 60% of Ruth's monthly medication costs going forward. He schedules a call with the hospital in San Francisco to negotiate payment terms for the surgical fees before the chapter's contribution is even applied. Ruth watches him work, and her face does something complicated that she does not try to explain. That first week has a rhythm to it. The men come and go from the apartment, not intrusively, not in ways that fill the small space beyond its capacity, but consistently. Someone is always reachable. Someone is always there. Lily comes home from school on Wednesday to find Boulder sitting on the stairs outside the building. He is enormous and out of place in the context of elementary school backpacks and spelling homework, and the other kids give him a wide berth as they pass, and he does not seem to notice or care. He has a paper bag from the grocery store. "Got stuff for dinner," he says. "You know how to cook." "Some," Lily says. "Good. You can teach me what you know, and I will teach you what I know." "Deal." She looks at him for a moment with those careful dark eyes. "Deal," she says. They go upstairs, and Boulder makes enough food to last 3 days working in the tiny kitchen with a focused competence that seems at odds with the scale of him, and Lily stands beside him and learns things. And he learns from her that her mother likes her coffee with 2 sugars, and that the left burner on the stove runs hot and needs to be watched. And in this way, in the ordinary intimacy of a shared kitchen on a weekday afternoon, the first threads are woven. Blackjack comes on Thursday after school with no particular agenda and a talent for filling space with stories. He sits on the floor with Lily cross-legged back against the wall, and he tells her about Ghost. Not the ghost that lives in grief and photographs and shaky handwriting, but the ghost that Blackjack knew from the road, alive and ridiculous and completely himself. The chili cook-off in Barstow, for instance. There was a competition entry fee, $5 first prize, 200, and Ghost had decided that the chapter should participate both for the prize money and on principle, since he believed firmly that bikers made better chili than civilians and felt this needed to be demonstrated publicly. He had taken charge of the recipe, which was the first mistake. The second mistake was the peppers. Ghost had driven to 3 stores looking for the specific dried chilies he needed and had ended up at a market outside of town where the labeling was sparse, and he had made a confident selection that turned out upon usage to be ghost peppers rather than the mild variety he had intended. He did not realize this until the pot was fully assembled and simmering and smelling exactly right. By then, throwing it out felt wasteful. They entered it anyway. 3 of the 5 judges required medical attention. The chapter was disqualified but achieved a certain notoriety that followed them for years. Lily laughs until her sides hurt. She laughs the way children laugh when they have been given permission to fully and without reservation. And it is a sound that comes up through the thin floor to where Ruth is resting in the bedroom and makes her press her hand to her mouth and close her eyes because it has been a long time since the apartment sounded like that. Wrench comes on Friday evening and sits at the card table with Lily and her math homework. He looks at the worksheet, looks at her, and says, "What part is giving you trouble?" "Fractions," she says. "They do not make sense." "They make perfect sense," he says. "They are just patterns. Once you see the pattern, they are obvious. Here." He turns the worksheet over and draws on the back a series of simple diagrams, breaking things into parts, showing the relationships between numbers, the way you would show the relationship between parts of an engine, each piece with a function and a place. Within 20 minutes, Lily understands fractions. Within 40, she has finished the homework and started asking questions that go beyond what the worksheet was asking, the specific questions of a mind that has gotten interested and wants to keep going. Wrench teaches her for 2 hours. When he leaves, he is smiling in a way that his face seems slightly unpracticed at. Smoke comes at night. He comes quietly without announcement, and he brings books. Old ones, paperbacks with creased spines and slightly yellowed pages. Westerns and adventure stories, and tales of people who ride into hard situations and find their way through them. He sits in the chair next to Lily's mattress and reads to her, his voice low and even, the particular cadence of a man who has spent a lot of time thinking about the meaning of words before he allows himself to use them. He reads the way the road sounds at night, steady and continuous and somehow larger than itself. Lily falls asleep to the stories. Ruth stands in the bedroom doorway sometimes and listens, and Smoke is aware of her presence and adjusts nothing, just reads a little more clearly so the words carry to where she is standing. On the day of the surgery, 3 weeks after Lily walked into Rusty's diner, the Iron Riders filled the waiting room of a hospital in San Francisco. All 6 of them, plus 3 men from the Sacramento chapter who had contributed to the fund and wanted to be present, plus 2 old-timers from the Bay who had ridden with Ghost in the early years and heard about what was happening through the network and showed up without being asked. 11 men in leather vests occupying a hospital waiting room. The staff navigates around them with a particular careful politeness that contains within it the specific quality of people who are not sure what to make of a situation and have decided that courtesy is the safest approach. A nurse brings coffee. An orderly wheels a cart past and gives a wide berth. A small child in the waiting room stares at Boulder with the frank, uncensored attention of the very young. And Boulder stares back and then crosses his eyes. And the child dissolves into laughter and has to be collected by a parent who does not quite meet Boulder's gaze. Iron sits apart from the others near the window. He has a cup of coffee he is not drinking. He is thinking about Ghost as he has been thinking about Ghost with increasing frequency since the Sunday 3 weeks ago when the world shifted. He is thinking about what Ghost would make of this, of his brothers in a hospital waiting room in San Francisco waiting for news about the woman he loved, about the machinery that had moved into motion the moment his daughter said his name. He thinks Ghost would have laughed, would have said something self-deprecating about the dramatic circumstances, would have deflected the weight of it with humor the way he always did, and then later alone somewhere would have felt it fully. Iron understands now why Ghost left. It had taken him a decade to get there, but sitting in this waiting room, he understands it. Ghost had looked at this life, clearly had looked at what it gave and what it cost, and he had made an accounting. And the accounting had come out in favor of Ruth and the daughter who was not born yet. He had not left because the brotherhood did not matter. He had left because it did, because he understood loyalty well enough to recognize what it required of him in that particular moment. And it had required him to go. You can spend years being angry at a man for something like that, or you can sit in a hospital waiting room and let the anger finish becoming what it was always going to become, which is something that resembles eventually a kind of love. 6 hours after Ruth Cole goes into surgery, Dr. Harlan Webb comes through the double doors in his scrubs, pulling his cap from his head. He looks tired in the good way, the way surgeons look tired when they have done what they set out to do. He looks at the waiting room full of bikers. Mrs. Cole's family, he says. Iron stands. Yes. Webb nods. The procedure went well. Better than I anticipated, honestly. The damaged tissue is out. The remaining lung function is good. She is going to need time, and she is going to need the medication protocol, and she is going to need to be careful. But she is going to make it. The room exhales. Boulder makes a sound that he will describe later if pressed as clearing his throat. Wrench turns to the window. Blackjack sits down heavily in a plastic chair and puts his head in his hands for a moment. Smoke closes his eyes. Iron nods at the surgeon. Thank you, he says. The two words carry more weight than two words normally carry. Webb looks at him for a moment at the vest and the patches and the man inside them. And whatever he is thinking, what he says is, she is a fighter. Whatever she has been through, she did not stop fighting. He pauses. Neither apparently did you people. He goes back through the double doors. Lily has been at the clubhouse during the surgery in the care of the treasurer's wife, a woman named Dorothy who is approximately 70 years old and tolerates no nonsense from anyone regardless of size or reputation, and who made Lily eat a proper breakfast and 2 snacks and drink enough water and did not allow her to sit in one place worrying for more than 30 minutes at a stretch. When Iron calls with the news, Lily is in the clubhouse kitchen helping Dorothy roll out pie crust, flour on her forearms up to the elbows. She listens to Iron's voice on the phone. She hands the phone back to Dorothy. She picks up the rolling pin. She rolls the pie crust very carefully for a long time without saying anything. Then she says very quietly to the surface of the dough, "Okay, Dad. Okay." Dorothy pretends to need something from the other side of the kitchen so that the girl has a moment to herself. Ruth recovers. It is not fast, and it is not without difficulty. And there are days that are very hard days when the pain from surgery stacks on top of the existing difficulty of breathing and the side effects of the new medication protocol and what feels like the enormous task of rebuilding from the inside out. There are days when she cries from exhaustion and frustration and the particular indignity of needing so much help. There are days when the oxygen concentrator and the pill organizer and the breathing exercises feel less like a path back to health and more like evidence of how far she has fallen. But she does the exercises, she takes the medication, she does the physical therapy 3 times a week at the clinic in Reading. She eats what she needs to eat and sleeps the hour she needs to sleep and fights for every incremental improvement with the same stubborn consistency she has been applying to the problem of staying alive for the better part of a year. During Ruth's recovery, Lily and her mother stay at the clubhouse. Iron had raised this possibility carefully, not as a command, but as a practical solution to a practical problem. And Ruth had resisted in the way people resist, help they desperately need the resistance of someone who has pride and knows what it costs to let it go. Iron had not argued. He had simply said that the room was available and clean and quiet, and that the decision was hers, and that no one would push her either way. She agreed the next morning. The room they are given is upstairs, 2 windows that let in the morning light, wood floors that have been swept clean, a proper bed with a real mattress and clean sheets. The brothers have done their particular version of preparing a space, which means it is functional and well supplied and lacks certain decorative touches, but contains everything that matters. Boulder hangs curtains that Lily picks out a dark blue that she decides without explanation is the right choice. And nobody questions it. Wrench installs a better lock on the door because he noticed the existing one was loose. Blackjack stocks the bathroom cabinet with the specific things Ruth will need during recovery, researching this more carefully than his reputation would suggest he is capable of. Smoke sets up a small desk for Lily against the window, a lamp and a pencil cup, and a stack of notebooks, a place where a child can do her homework and look out at the trees. The clubhouse operates around them, not for them. The men go about their days and their business in their particular rhythms, and Lily and Ruth are folded into those rhythms with the same easy unself-consciousness with which you would fold someone into a family. Nobody makes a production of it. Nobody performs inclusion. It simply happens the way things happen when they are true. Lily learns the clubhouse the way children learn spaces they are allowed to inhabit freely by exploring, by asking questions that occur to her at random intervals, by spending time in corners, watching what happens there before deciding whether to participate. She spends a morning in the garage with Boulder and learns the difference between a crescent wrench and a socket wrench, and the specific sound a chain makes when it needs lubricating. She spends an afternoon with Wrench in the main room where he has disassembled something mechanical on the big table and is working through it with focused attention. And she watches until he notices her watching and explains what he is doing. And she asks questions that surprise him, and he explains more. She eats dinner with whoever is there. In the mornings when the clubhouse is quiet and the light comes through the window of their room at a low angle, Lily sometimes sits with Ruth while her mother does her breathing exercises. The slow, deliberate work of rebuilding lung capacity, one carefully managed breath at a time. Ruth counts silently while she works. Lily counts too in her head, matching her own breath to her mother's, as if by breathing alongside her, she can contribute to the effort somehow. Neither of them talks about this. It is just something they do. Smoke comes at night as he always has. But the books he brings now are different from those first weeks. Not the straightforward westerns of the earliest evenings, the simple stories of men riding toward clear horizons. These are harder book stories where the right thing costs something, where the hero loses people along the way and keeps going regardless. He and Lily have passed some threshold without discussing it, and the reading has changed to match where she actually is. Some nights she falls asleep before he finishes a chapter. Some nights she does not sleep at all, and they sit in the dark after he closes the book, and she asks him questions. He answers slowly and carefully the way he does everything. Ruth no longer stands in the doorway. She trusts the darkness with her daughter now. That too is a kind of recovery. Ruth watches her daughter navigate this world with the particular wrenching attention of a mother who has been sick enough to understand what her daughter's life would look like without her. And she observes what these men are doing to Lily. Not the grand gestures, not the money and the medical bills, and the confrontation with Stokes, but the daily, ordinary accumulation of it. Boulder on the stairs with a grocery bag, Wrench in the fraction diagrams, Blackjack in the stories. Smoke in the books that keep getting harder because Lily keeps being ready for harder. What it is doing is this. It is showing Lily what men can be. Not what men often are, not what Lily has seen from the edges of her own hardship, not Stokes yelling through a hollow door. What men can be when they have made a decision about who they are, and they live inside that decision consistently over years and miles and circumstances that test it. She thinks about Ghost. She thinks about the fact that he learned this here in this brotherhood and carried it home and applied it to the life he built with her. That the loyalty in the showing up and the refusal to let his people face things alone, all of that came from something he found in these men, and he had been good enough and intentional enough to bring it with him when he left. She had not fully understood what he was giving her in all those years of their quiet life in Oregon. She understands now. On a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks into their stay at the clubhouse, a social worker comes to the door. Her name is Janet Ferris, and she is young, late 20s with the specific, careful manner of someone who has been trained to walk into complicated situations and make accurate assessments without projecting. She has a clipboard and a county identification badge and an expression that is professional and earnest and slightly uncertain, the uncertainty of a person who did not expect the driveway to contain 14 motorcycles. She introduces herself. She says she has received a complaint, an anonymous complaint about the welfare of a minor residing at this address. Iron thanks her for coming and invites her inside. The men who are present find reasons to be elsewhere, except for Iron and Boulder, who remain in the main room with Ruth and Lily. Lily is sitting at the table doing homework. Ruth is sitting across from her with a cup of tea. The room is orderly. There is food visible in the kitchen. There are children's books on the shelf that smoke has been adding to over the weeks. The oxygen concentrator sits beside Ruth's chair, hissing its steady sound. Ferris sits across from them and asks her questions carefully, professionally, going through the assessment she is required to perform. She asks about living arrangements and school attendance and meals and medical care. She writes on her clipboard. She looks at the room and at the people in it. Then she looks at Lily, and Lily looks back at her. There is a silence that is approximately 4 seconds long. Then Lily says, without having been asked a question, "These people are my family." Ferris looks at her, waits. "My father rode with these men for 15 years, Lily says. Her voice is steady and clear in the manner of someone who has been thinking about what they would say if someone needed to hear it. "When he died, he left me instructions to find them if I ever needed help. I needed help. I found them." She pauses. "They paid the bills my mom could not pay. They got her the surgery she needed. They gave us somewhere safe to stay while she gets better." Another pause. "My dad knew they would do all of this. That is why he trusted them with us." She reaches into the pocket of her jeans and lays the photograph on the table. The old one, the faded one. Ghost and his brothers young and grinning in front of their bikes. She lays it face up and leaves it there and does not say anything else. Ferris looks at the photograph, then at Lily, then at Ruth, who is watching her daughter with an expression that contains approximately 7 different things at once. Then Ferris looks at Iron, who has been standing near the wall saying nothing. He meets her gaze and holds it, and he does not say a word because Lily has already said everything. Ferris writes something on her clipboard. She closes the clipboard. She thanks everyone for their time. She says she will be filing her assessment this afternoon. She says she does not anticipate any issues. She leaves. After the door closes, Boulder exhales. Wrench, who has been visible in the hallway doorway for the last 10 minutes, comes back into the room. Blackjack says from somewhere behind Wrench, "How old is that kid again?" "9, Ruth says. "9, Blackjack repeats. He shakes his head slowly. "Ghost's kid," he says, and there is in those 2 words everything he would need a much longer speech to otherwise express. Smoke from the doorway looks at Lily for a moment. Then he looks at the photograph still on the table. Then he nods once to himself as if confirming something he has known for a long time. Iron looks at Lily across the room. She looks back at him with those dark eyes that belong to someone older, and in them he sees her father, not in any feature he could specifically name, but in the quality of the looking, the directness of it, the absolute refusal to look away from the thing in front of her. He thinks about the anonymous complaint. He thinks about the only person who had both the motive and the awareness of their situation to make it. He thinks about a man sitting in a leasing office with a paid-in-full receipt, and what kind of man files a complaint about a 9-year-old girl's welfare after cornering that same girl in a hallway. He does not say this out loud. 2 days later, he drives to Gary Stokes' leasing office alone. Just him, no Boulder, no one. He goes in the middle of the afternoon on a Wednesday. He sits across the desk from the man who filed an anonymous complaint about the welfare of a child whose mother he had harassed for months. He does not raise his voice. He does not threaten. He simply sits across the desk from Gary Stokes and looks at him for a very long time without saying anything. Then he says, "We know." Stokes opens his mouth. "Do not," Iron says. Stokes closes his mouth. Iron stands. He adjusts his vest. He walks to the door and he turns back. "That little girl is going to be fine. Her mother is going to be fine. They have people now, people who do not forget and do not look away. He holds Stokes's gaze for one more moment. I would think about that. He leaves. Outside, the afternoon is ordinary. Cars passing, a dog somewhere. The world unchanged by what just happened in that office, which is fine because the world does not need to know. Iron drives back to the clubhouse with the windows down, the November air coming through the cab cold and clean, and he does not think about Gary Stokes for the rest of the drive. There are more important things to think about. Ruth, for instance. Who is getting stronger? Gary Stokes never contacts Ruth Cole again. He sells the building 6 months later and moves to Fresno. Nobody mentions this to Lily or Ruth. It is not the kind of thing that needs to be mentioned. Ruth gets stronger. Week by week, increment by increment, the way real recovery works, not dramatically but steadily. The medication is doing what it is meant to do. The damaged tissue is gone, and what remains is functioning, and the body is adapting. She breathes more easily. The shadows under her eyes recede by degrees. Her color comes back, the high cheekbones and the green eyes emerging from the grayness that illness had put over everything. She starts cooking. She insists on it over mild protest from everyone who tells her she should rest, and she overrules them all in the quiet, determined way she has of overruling things she disagrees with, and she cooks dinner for whoever is at the clubhouse on a Thursday night, and it is the best meal anyone has eaten there in recent memory. She is a good cook, a very good cook, the kind that does not make a fuss about it, but understands what flavors need from each other and has the patience to let things develop. The Thursday dinners become a thing, not formally announced, not scheduled, just something that starts happening. Ruth cooking on Thursday evenings for whoever is around, which gradually becomes most of the chapter, because the word has gotten out that the food is extraordinary and the company is good. She and Blackjack develop a rapport built on the fact that they both have good timing, his comedic and hers drier than anyone expected, and they keep each other laughing across the kitchen counter while the food works on the stove. The oxygen concentrator becomes less and less present. First, she is using it only at night, then only occasionally. Then one Tuesday morning, she disconnects it and leaves it in the corner and does her breathing exercises without it, and the exercises go well, and she does not reconnect it. Nobody comments on this, but Boulder smiles at the wall for approximately 30 seconds after he notices. Iron makes a call to an old associate, a man named Ted Garrity, who runs a logistics company in Sacramento, who owes Iron the kind of favor that does not expire. He explains Ruth's situation, her background in scheduling and administration, her reliability, the way she has managed what she has managed under circumstances that would have broken most people. Garrity calls Ruth the following week. She has a job within the month. Office work coordinating regional freight schedules, the kind of work that suits a mind that has been keeping track of multiple complex problems simultaneously and just needs a stable context in which to apply that skill. Good pay, benefits, health insurance that covers her medication and her quarterly pulmonology checkups, a future she can plan for. She comes home from her first day at work and finds Lily in the main room of the clubhouse doing her homework, Boulder sitting nearby with a magazine, and she stands in the doorway for a moment, and the room does not see her right away, and she watches her daughter's head bent over her books in the lamplight, and the big man nearby, and the sounds of the clubhouse around them, and she makes a decision. She is not going to cry. She is going to hold this. She is going to hold it the way you hold something you do not want to spill, carefully with both hands. Later, she will tell Iron about the job and thank him, and he will say something characteristically brief and deflecting, and she will not let him deflect, will say what needs to be said clearly and completely, because Ghost taught her by the way he lived that the things that need saying should be said. She tells him, "He was right about you. He was right about all of you. I did not understand that until now, and I am sorry it took so long, but I understand it now." Iron looks at her for a moment. Then he looks at the window and the darkness outside, and when he looks back, his voice is quiet. "He was right about you too," he says. "Whatever he saw in you when he chose, he was right. On the day Lily and Ruth move into their new apartment a month after that conversation, the Iron Riders arrive at the clubhouse at 8 in the morning with 3 pickup trucks between them. The moving takes less time than it should because there is not much to move Lily's school things and her stuffed bear and the notebooks full of Wrench's math diagrams and the growing stack of Smoke's paperback westerns. Ruth's clothes and her medical papers and the photograph that Iron had framed and hung on the wall of their room at the clubhouse, Ghost and his brothers, young and permanent, in their silver frame. Iron takes the frame down carefully and wraps it in a shirt for the drive. The new apartment is 2 bedrooms on the 2nd floor of a building in a part of Reading where the streetlights work and the stairs do not wobble and the neighbors wave. The kitchen is bigger than anything Ruth has had in years. Lily's bedroom has a window that faces east. They paint the walls. Ruth picks the color a pale yellow that she says looks like afternoon light. And Boulder at the hardware store, enormous in the narrow paint aisle, holds up the color chips one by one until she finds the right one. And he does not hurry her. And when she finds it, he buys 3 times as much as the room probably needs because he is Boulder, and this is how he does things. The painting takes most of a Saturday. Lily is involved in this as she is involved in everything, sleeves rolled up and learning to cut a clean edge at the ceiling. Blackjack showing her the technique while managing to cover his own forearm with pale yellow, in a way that he claims is Lily's fault, and she denies completely, and neither of them is going to resolve this disagreement today or ever. At the end of the day, when the room is done and the furniture is in, and the kitchen is stocked and the beds are made, Iron hangs the framed photograph on the living room wall. He adjusts it until it is level steps back, looks at it for a moment. Beside it, he hangs a second photograph, a new one printed from someone's phone onto proper photo paper in a simple frame. The image is from the evening 2 weeks ago when they had all gathered at the clubhouse and someone had pointed a camera at the group of them, Lily and Ruth in the middle surrounded by the 6 men, everyone grinning or trying not to grin the clubhouse behind them. 2 photographs on the wall. One of Ghost and his brothers, young and wild and permanent. One of the family that Ghost's choice had made. Iron looks at them for a moment. Then he looks at Lily, who is standing beside him looking at the same thing. Family, he says. Simple. No theater in it. Lily looks at the photographs. The old one her father alive and laughing before she was born. The new one herself and her mother surrounded by the men her father trusted. He knew, she says. Yeah, Iron says, he knew. She looks at the room around them, then away from the photographs and toward the present. The pale yellow walls, the kitchen stocked with food, the window in her bedroom that faces east, where the morning will come in. She has spent so much of her 9 years thinking about what was lost and what it cost and what her father gave up that she has not yet made room for what comes next. She makes room for it now. She is 10 years old in 2 months. There is so much road ahead. She reaches up and straightens the new photograph just slightly until it is level beside the old one, and then she turns away from the wall and walks toward the kitchen, where the sound of her uncles arguing about who is actually responsible for the steaks already fills the apartment with something that sounds unmistakably like home. Wrench, watching from across the room, nods to himself. Boulder picks up a paintbrush from the floor that someone missed and puts it in the bag. Smoke stands near the window, looking out at the street below, where the bikes are parked, and for a moment his face in the afternoon light is completely open. Unguarded, the careful stillness momentarily replaced by something softer. He turns from the window and looks at the room, at the pale yellow walls, and the photographs, and the girl who has already moved on to the kitchen, and the men finding their places in the space. He looks satisfied. The way a man looks when something he has been waiting years for has finally completely arrived. The years do what years do. They move through a life the way weather moves through a landscape, not always noticed in the moment, but visible in the changes they leave behind. The pale yellow apartment becomes home in the way that only happens slowly, through the accumulation of ordinary days, through the particular intimacy of a space that has held someone's grief, in their recovery, in their gradual return to something that resembles hope. Lily grows. Not just in the obvious physical ways, though. Those happen too. The slow lengthening of a child into someone taller, the face changing by degrees from round to angular, the ponytail she always wore, eventually giving way to other choices, and then sometimes back again. She grows in the other ways, the ones that matter more and are harder to measure. She grows in confidence, in incompetence, and in the particular quality that her father had possessed, the ability to look at a hard thing directly and not flinch from what it requires. She is good at school, very good in the way that goes beyond simply doing the work correctly, in the way that means she is interested, that she asks questions past the edge of what the curriculum requires and keeps going when the teacher has moved on. Wrench's influence is visible in this. The fraction diagrams have become geometry, have become algebra, have become a genuine love of the way numbers describe the world, the way a well-constructed equation is a kind of argument that holds because it must. She is in the garage every weekend that Boulder will have her. He teaches her to read an engine the way you read a person by listening to it, by paying attention to what sounds right and what sounds wrong, by understanding that every mechanical system is a conversation between parts, and your job is to know the language well enough to understand when something is being said. She is a natural. Her hands are small but precise, and she is not afraid to get them dirty, and she does not rush, which Boulder tells her is the most important thing. Most people rush, he says one Saturday afternoon, bent over a carburetor with Lily beside him. They want to be done. You cannot be in a hurry with engines. Engine will tell you what it needs when it is ready. Your job is to be present when it decides to tell you. Lily is 11 years old, and she files this away in the part of her mind where she keeps the things that seem to be about more than what they are literally about. Blackjack gives her stories, and she gives him an audience, which is all he ever truly needed. He tells her about Ghost in installments, parceling out the memories across months and years, the way a good storyteller knows to do, not all at once, not in a rush of nostalgia, but deliberately the right story at the right time. The Barstow Chili Cook-Off, the midnight run to Montana. The time Ghost convinced a judge in Flagstaff that the motorcycle in question had not in fact been doing 94 miles per hour in a 40 zone because it was physically impossible for that particular engine configuration to achieve that speed. An argument that was almost entirely wrong on its technical merits, but was delivered with such absolute conviction that the judge let him go with a warning. Lily laughs at every one of them, and sometimes after the laughter, there is a moment of quiet in which she holds the image of her father alive and ridiculous and completely himself. And she carries that image forward with her because it is different from the image she has of him at the end, which is the one she cannot help but see when she closes her eyes sometimes. Blackjack understands what he is doing when he tells these stories. He never says so. He just tells the stories. Ruth thrives. The job at Garrity's logistics company suits her in the way that a good fit between a person and their work is visible from the outside. She is methodical and detail-oriented, and she understands systems, how they interconnect, where the pressure points are, what needs to be monitored, and what can be trusted to run. Within a year, she is managing a small team. Within 3, she is overseeing regional operations. She becomes, without particularly intending to, someone the company depends on, which is a different feeling entirely from being someone the world has been slowly grinding down. Her lungs are not what they were before the diagnosis. They will not be. The progression has slowed significantly, nearly stopped with the medication and the quarterly monitoring, but some things that are taken cannot be fully returned. She manages this. She exercises carefully and rests when she needs to, and takes her medication without fail and goes to her appointments and does not spend time being angry about what she cannot change, which is a discipline she has had to learn and is still, on certain mornings, relearning. She meets Garrett Alderman at a parent-teacher conference when Lily is 12. He is a 7th grade English teacher at Lily's school, a man in his early 40s with reading glasses he keeps losing in a quality of genuine attentiveness that is immediately apparent, the quality of someone who actually listens to what is being said rather than constructing his response while waiting for the other person to finish. He tells Ruth that Lily is one of the most thoughtful writers he has encountered in 15 years of teaching, that she has an unusual ability to say complicated things in simple language, And he says it the way teachers say things they mean directly and with specific examples. Ruth asks what kind of writing. He tells her a recent assignment had asked students to write about someone who taught them something important. Most of the class had written about parents or coaches or grandparents. Lily had written about a man named Vincent Dade, who sat in a chair beside her bed and read to her about outlaws and heroes and about what she understood from the way he read, which was that stories are not escapes from the real world, but instructions for moving through it. Ruth looks at him over the desk in the classroom with its alphabet border and its posters about reading, and she says, she is right about that. He looks back at her and says, I know. They have dinner 2 weeks later. Garrett is patient and unhurried and does not try to be anything he is not, which is a quality that Ruth has come to understand is rarer than it should be. He asks about Lily and listens to the answer. He asks about Ruth's work and is genuinely interested. He does not press about Daniel, whose presence in the apartment is visible in the photograph on the wall and the bracelet on Lily's wrist that she never takes off, a detail he has noticed and filed away for later understanding. The Iron Riders notice Garrett before Ruth officially introduces him, because in a town the size of Reading, things get back to people, and because Lily mentions him in passing with the particular studied casualness of a teenager who has opinions she is not fully declaring. Iron asks with equal studied casualness what Ruth thinks of this teacher. Ruth looks at him. I think he is a good man. Iron nods. The introduction happens at a barbecue at the clubhouse 6 months into Ruth and Garrett's relationship. Garrett arrives in a sensible car, wearing a button-down shirt, visibly aware that he is walking into something that requires something of him without being entirely sure what. Boulder looks at him from across the lot for a long moment. Wrench asks him almost immediately what he knows about engines. Garrett says honestly that he knows very little but is willing to learn, which is an answer that Wrench receives better than a confident claim would have been. Blackjack asks him 3 questions about Lily that only someone paying real attention to her would know how to answer. He answers all 3 correctly. Smoke sits across from him at the picnic table for 5 minutes and does not say anything. Garrett holds the silence without fidgeting, which Smoke registers. Iron talks to him last after the food when the afternoon has gone easy and the bikes are gleaming in the late sun and the beer is cold. She has been through a lot, Iron says. I know, Garrett says. So has the kid. I know that too. Iron looks at him, the long, steady look that he has used across decades to determine what a man is made of without asking directly. What are you looking for here? Garrett is quiet for a moment. Not the silence of someone buying time to construct an acceptable answer. The silence of someone who has already thought about this and is choosing how to say it accurately. Something real, he says. That is all. Just something real. Iron holds the look for another moment. Then he nods once briefly and picks up his beer. Garrett passes. Ruth marries him 3 years later in June in the backyard of a house they have rented together in the east part of town. It is a small wedding, immediate family, and close friends, and the Iron Riders in their vests. The patches catching the afternoon light as the men arrange themselves on the folding chairs that Boulder has positioned with a precision he normally reserves for engines. Iron walks Ruth down the makeshift aisle between the chairs. He does not make a speech about this. He simply offers his arm, and she takes it, and they walk together across the grass, and the people watching them know, without being told what this means, and who is being honored by it. Lily is 16 and stands beside her mother as maid of honor, in a dress she selected herself. Dark blue, practical, and lovely. Both her dark eyes moving between her mother's face and Garrett's, and the assembled guests with the watchful attention that has never entirely left her, even as she has grown into someone who knows better when to deploy it and when to let her guard down. After the ceremony, Blackjack gives a toast that moves between funny and devastating, with the timing of someone who has spent decades understanding what rooms need. He talks about Ghost, without saying Ghost's name, talks about a man who understood what mattered and built his life accordingly. He talks about Ruth and what she survived and who she became. He raises his glass and says, to the people who stay and to the people who leave us the right roadmap. The glasses rise. In the back of the gathering, Smoke stands with his own glass raised, looking at something beyond the backyard. Beyond the June evening and whatever he is looking at, he is smiling. Lily goes to college on a partial scholarship, and the rest covered by the chapter, every man contributing without discussion when the time comes, because this is what was decided the day Lily walked into Rusty's diner, and it has not been undecided since. She studies mechanical engineering at Cal Poly Wrench's alma mater, a fact that Wrench mentions exactly once, and then never brings up again, though the pride in his face when he says it is something Lily will not forget. She is good at it, better than good. She has the combination of attributes that engineering rewards the patience to work through complexity and the imagination to see past the current solution to a better one. And she applies these to problems with the focused pleasure of someone doing work they were made to do. She calls Boulder every Sunday. Not every single Sunday, not with the rigidity of an obligation, but most Sundays the way you call someone who has been part of the structure of your week for long enough that the week feels incomplete without it. She tells him about the project she is working on, some component or system she is trying to improve, and he listens with the attention he gives to engines, which is total and genuine. He tells her what is happening at the clubhouse, who is there, what is running and what needs work. Small things, the ordinary fabric of a life being lived. She visits when she can. Long weekends and school breaks, the clubhouse filling back up around her in the way familiar spaces do, the particular smell of it and the sound of it, and the men somewhat older but essentially themselves. Blackjack's timing may be a half beat slower but no less sharp. Wrench's hand steadier. If anything, Boulder's laugh still filling the room from floor to ceiling. Smoke gives her a new book every visit. He has never stopped. She graduates with honors, gives a speech at commencement about the practical applications of understanding how things are connected to each other, which is technically about engineering and is also not at all only about engineering. Ruth and Garrett are in the audience. The Iron Riders are in the audience. 6 men in leather vests in the third row, the patches catching the light. When Lily walks across the stage, Boulder stands up. The others stand with him. Half the auditorium stands because the energy in the room requires it. Lily sees them from the stage, and for a moment she forgets that she is in front of a large number of people, and her face does the thing it did in the diner when she was 9 years old, and first let the composure go. The thing that makes her look exactly like who she is, someone who has been loved well and knows it. She gets a job with a motorcycle manufacturer in Milwaukee designing powertrain systems. She is good at it in the way that becomes visible quickly, the way that means she is given more responsibility and more interesting problems, and eventually her own small team people who work with her on things that have not been solved yet. She patents a cooling system modification in her second year that improves efficiency in sustained high heat conditions by a margin that surprises the engineering team lead, who tells her in a review meeting that he has not seen this kind of instinct for thermodynamics in an engineer her age. She thanks him, and on her drive home she thinks about Boulder explaining an engine as a conversation between parts, and she thinks about how she learned to listen before she learned to speak. On her desk in Milwaukee, in the corner where the window is, she keeps the photograph. The old one. Ghost mid-laugh arm around iron shoulders, the cigarette behind his ear, the absolute certainty of a young man who does not know yet what the future holds, but believes in himself regardless. She looks at it every morning when she sits down. Some mornings it is simply a photograph. Some mornings it is the whole story, all of it at once. The diner and the waiting room and the pale yellow walls, and Smoke's voice reading about outlaws, all of it contained in the image of a man laughing in front of a bar somewhere in his 20s, invincible and temporary and entirely himself. She is 28 years old when her phone rings on a Thursday evening in November, and Boulder's number is on the screen, and she knows before she answers it because Boulder calls on Sundays, not Thursdays, and the week has not changed its structure for anything ordinary. She answers. "It is iron," Boulder says. His voice has a quality she has not heard in it before. Not grief exactly. Something ahead of grief. He is at the hospital. Lung cancer. They found it 3 weeks ago, but he did not want to tell you until he had to. He wanted to tell you himself, but he is having a hard week, and he asked me to call. She sits with this for a moment. "I am coming," she says. She drives through the night 15 hours with stops for gas and coffee, the interstate unreeling ahead of her headlights in the November dark, the flat Midlands giving way to the mountains, giving way to the long descent into California. She drives the way her father's brothers taught her to cover distance with attention and without hurrying, knowing that the road between here and there is part of the journey and not a thing to be defeated. Iron is in a room at the hospital in Reading. He is smaller than she has ever seen him and also somehow entirely himself. The silver hair, the scar from his jaw to his ear, the dark eyes that find her immediately when she walks in and hold her with the particular steadiness of someone who has decided how they are going to meet this thing and has made peace with the decision. You drove, he says, all night. Ghost used to do that, drive all night when something needed doing. He coughs, manages it, sets it aside. How is Milwaukee? She pulls a chair to the side of the bed. Milwaukee can wait. He looks at her for a long moment. In the quality of that look is everything the years have accumulated, the diner and the waiting room and the pale yellow walls, and all the Sundays and all the ordinary, extraordinary days of a family that assembled itself out of grief and loyalty and a photograph with handwriting on the back. I want to go out to Highway 1, he says, before I cannot. She understands immediately. When tomorrow, if you will drive, I will drive. The next morning is cold and clear, the California November sky, the specific blue that has no gray in it, the mountains visible to the east with new snow on the high ridges. She helps him to the car with a steadiness that she has learned from watching people who know how to be steady, and they drive north out of Reading on Route 1, O1 picking up the coast highway north of Willits, following it where it bends and climbs above the ocean. He tells her to stop at a place she would not have found herself, a small turnout north of Fort Bragg, where the road curves away from a cliff edge and a stand of cypress trees leans permanently inland from the prevailing wind. She pulls over. The ocean is below and to the west, gray-green and enormous, and the sound of it comes up the cliff face like something breathing. He gets out carefully. She stays close without making it obvious, the way she has learned to do in these weeks since the call. He walks to the edge of the turnout where the gravel ends and a low guardrail begins, and he stops. He looks down at the shoulder of the road. She looks too. There is a small metal stake driven into the ground just inside the guardrail, old and rusted, the kind of thing that could be mistaken for a surveying marker or an old fence remnant, unremarkable to anyone who did not know. Tied to it is a strip of leather. It has been there a long time. The leather has gone stiff and dark from years of weather, sun faded on the exposed side, the original color visible only in the creases where the rain has not reached. But it is still there, still tied. She looks at Iron. This is where Ghost saved your life, she says. Not a question. Right here. His voice is quiet, stripped of everything that is not essential. I went down in that turn, gravel on the road, went over the side of the bike and hit the guardrail and ended up on the shoulder. Femoral artery nicked. I was bleeding fast. He looks at the rusted stake. Ghost got the belt off his jeans before he even had the bike stopped. Tied it off. Sat on that road with me until the ambulance came. He pauses. Would not let go of my hand. That is what I remember most. He just kept holding on. Lily looks at the leather strip against the rusted stake. The years it has been here, the rain and the sun and the wind off the ocean that have weathered it to the still tide, still present. You put this here, she says. Week after he died, drove up here alone, did not tell anyone. He looks at it for a moment. I did not want to forget where it happened. Did not want the road to just be a road. She understands this. She has understood it all her life without having this specific piece of it. The knowledge that Iron had been here alone after Ghost died, doing the only thing he knew how to do with grief, when the grief was for someone who saved your life, which is to mark the place and not look away from it. She reaches down and touches the leather strip briefly with 2 fingers. It is hard under her hands, smooth in some places, rough in others, where the weather has worked at it. She straightens up. He held on, she says. He always held on, Iron says. That was Ghost. He held on. They stand there for a while. The ocean makes its sound below them. A car passes on the highway and is gone. The cypress trees lean their permanent lean away from the wind. On the drive back, Iron sleeps in the passenger seat, his head against the window, and she drives carefully and does not turn on the radio. She watches the road and the light changing on the hills, and she thinks about her father on this road, young and moving fast and holding on. That evening back at the clubhouse, she goes to find Smoke. She finds him in the garage, which is where Smoke goes when he wants to think, standing near the workbench with his hands in his pockets, looking at nothing in particular. He turns when she comes in. He looks at her face and reads it the way he has always read her, with the total attention of someone who learned early that the things not said are usually the most important ones. He showed me the place on the highway, she says. Smoke nods. He has been going there alone for 20 years. I know, Smoke says. She looks around the garage. The familiar smell of it, oil and metal and something older underneath. The workbenches, the tools in their places, the bikes in various states of assembly and repair. And then Smoke walks to the back of the garage, to the corner she has never had reason to look at closely, where old equipment is stored under tarps and the light does not quite reach. He takes the corner of a tarp and pulls it back. Underneath is a motorcycle. A Harley Davidson, older the model, from the early 90s, with a tank that has been repainted at some point but is now faded, the chrome work still intact, the leather seat dry but not cracked, the kind of condition that means someone has been taking care of it for a very long time without using it. Lily looks at it. She knows before Smoke says it. She has known since the moment she saw the chrome catch the garage light from under the tarp, has known in the way. You know things that have been true your whole life and are only now becoming visible. Boulder has been keeping it, Smoke says, since before you were born. Ghost left it when he went to Oregon. Said he could not take it with him, could not keep riding with a baby coming, but he could not sell it either. He pauses. Boulder put it in here and kept it up. Changed the oil every year. Started it every few months to keep the engine from seizing. Never told anyone he was doing it. Another pause. Just kept it. Lily walks to the bike slowly. She runs her hand along the tank. The paint is warm from the garage air. The chrome on the handlebars is clean. She looks at the seat at the small storage compartment beneath it, and she opens it. Inside is a key. And underneath the key, folded twice into a square so small it looks like it might not be anything as a piece of paper. She unfolds it carefully. The paper is old. The fold lines deeply crease, the edges soft from age. The handwriting is her father's. She knows it from the photograph. The same careful letters, but these are from earlier, the hand steadier, the letters form without effort. It says, when she is ready, she will know. Until then, keep it safe. I trust you with this, the way I trust you with everything that matters. Ghost. She reads it twice. She folds it back along its old lines and holds it in her palm and looks at the motorcycle that her father rode before she was born. That Boulder has started every few months for nearly 30 years in a garage in Reading while she grew up and went to school and learned fractions and drove to Milwaukee and designed engines. And she understands that this is what love looks like when it runs long, when it outlives the person who started it and keeps going anyway. Carried forward by the people who understood what it was for. She sits on the seat. It fits in the way things fit when they were always going to. She puts the key in the ignition. She looks at the garage door and then at Smoke, who nods once, and she reaches down and presses the garage door opener that is clipped to the workbench, and the door rolls up, and the November evening comes in cold and blue and enormous. She turns the key. The engine turns over once, twice, and then it catches. The sound fills the garage and spills out into the evening. The particular voice of a well-maintained machine that has been waiting patiently and is now finally being asked to do what it was built to do. It is not loud in the way new bikes are loud. It is deeper than that. The sound of something that has been around long enough to know what it is. Lily sits on her father's motorcycle in a garage in Reading in November with the engine running and the sound of it moving through her hands and her chest. And whatever she is made of, that is the same as what he was made of. and she does not try to hold herself together. She does not cry from sadness exactly. She cries from the weight of everything arriving at once, from the accumulated force of all the years between the day he died and this moment, from the knowledge that he had planned this too, had left this here for her. The way he had left the photograph and the note and the roadmap, had understood that there would come a day when she was ready and had made sure the thing would be waiting. Boulder appears in the garage doorway. He has been in the house. He has heard the engine start. He stands in the doorway with his enormous frame filling it, and his face is doing something she has not seen it do before. Not in the diner, not in the hospital, waiting room, not at any of the hard moments of the years between. It is not grief and it is not joy exactly. It is the expression of a man who made a promise to someone he loved and has just watched the last piece of it arrive. He does not say anything. He does not need to. He just stands there in the doorway with the November evening behind him and lets the engine run, because some sounds deserve to be heard completely without interruption, without comment. Bearing witness, which is what he has always done best. Iron dies on a Tuesday in January early in the morning in the hospital room, where the window faces east and the first light comes in low and long across the floor. Boulder is there. Wrench is there. Blackjack and Smoke are in the hallway. Lily is holding his hand. He goes quietly the way certain men go, who have spent their lives making noise and have made their peace with the silence at the end. His chest rises and falls, and then does not rise again, and the room is very still, and the morning light keeps coming through the window, the way morning light does, indifferent and beautiful. Lily sits with him for a while after. She holds his hand and talks to him quietly, telling him things she has been saving, things she wants him to know before the distance between them becomes final. She tells him what he gave her. She tells him that he kept the promise. She tells him that whatever her father is, wherever he is, he knows, and he is grateful, and so is she. She tells him he was family, not by blood, by everything else. The funeral is in February on a cold, clear day that carries some of Iron's quality, uncompromising and wide open. Motorcycles come from everywhere. Chapters from Sacramento and Fresno, and the Bay men who rode with Iron in the early years, and men who knew him only by reputation and felt the need to come anyway. They line the road to the cemetery in a formation that stretches further than any single eye can hold. And the sound of them moving together is something the people watching from the roadside feel in their bones. Lily speaks at the service. She has written it out and then put the paper away because she finds she does not need it. She knows what she wants to say. She has known for a long time. She talks about a Sunday morning in October, a 9-year-old girl in a too-thin jacket, a diner where the jukebox played Johnny Cash. She talks about what it means to walk into a room full of strangers and believe on the strength of your father's handwriting on the back of an old photograph that you will be safe there. She talks about what it means to be right. She talks about Iron, about the man who knelt down so his eyes were level with hers, about the man who paid 3 months of rent without hesitation and drove to a leasing office and said things that needed saying, about the man who sat in a hospital waiting room for 6 hours in a leather vest and could not quite hide what happened to his face when the surgeon came out with good news, about the man who drove alone to a turnout on Highway 1 and drove a stake into the ground and tied a strip of leather to it so that he would never forget where someone had held on. She says he was my father's brother. He was my uncle. He was one of the best men I have ever known, and I have known some very good men, because my father knew how to find them and trusted me to find them too. She says the promise was made before I was born, and it was kept every day of my life, and it is still being kept right now in this room by every person standing in it. She says that is what brotherhood is. Not a word, not a patch on a vest. It is a verb. It is what you do. And Jack Calloway did it every day until he could not. They lower the casket. Every bike in the formation revs its engine 3 times. The sound rolls across the cemetery and up into the winter sky, and it does not dissipate quickly the way ordinary sounds do. It stays for a moment held by something, the cold air or the weight of what it means, and then it fades slowly, leaving behind a silence that is different from the silence before it. Fuller somehow, more complete. The years continue. Ruth and Garrett in their house on the east side of Reading, the windows facing the mountains, the kitchen always smelling of something being made. Ruth's lungs stable monitored, managed present, but not defining. She has grown into the life she rebuilt with the same quiet competence with which she rebuilt it. Not dramatically, not with announcements, just consistently day after day, which is the only way anything real is ever built. She keeps the photograph on the wall. Ghost mid-laugh, the cigarette behind his ear, and beside it the newer one, Lily and Ruth, surrounded by the men who showed up. She looks at them sometimes in the mornings when the light is right, and she thinks about the choice he made before Lily was born, the choice to leave the road and build something quieter. And she has long since stopped carrying the grief of his absence in the sharp way of early loss. What she carries now is different. It is the understanding of what he did and why and what it made possible. It is gratitude that has had time to become something quieter and more permanent than its earlier forms. She thinks he was right to trust them. She thinks I was wrong to be afraid. She thinks we are okay, Daniel. We are really okay. Lily marries a man named Owen Seal, a structural engineer with a dry sense of humor and the kind of steadiness that comes from knowing who you are and not needing anyone else to confirm it. They meet at a conference in Chicago. He asks intelligent questions about her cooling system patent, and she asks him about load distribution and suspension design. And by the end of the conference, they have agreed to have dinner. And by the end of dinner, they have agreed to have dinner again. The Iron Riders meet him at the clubhouse on a Saturday in spring. Boulder looks at him across the lot. Wrench asks about the structural properties of chromolyzed steel versus aluminum in frame construction. Blackjack tells him a story that has a test embedded in it and watches how Owen responds to the punchline. Smoke sits across from him at the table outside and does not say anything for 4 minutes. Owen holds all of it without deflecting or performing, and when Boulder asks him what his intentions are regarding Lily Cole, he says, without any of the usual hedging, to build something with her that lasts. That is what I am good at, building things that last. Boulder nods, a slow, considered nod. They get married at the clubhouse because where else would it be? The bikes are parked in a row along the fence chrome catching the June light, and the folding chairs are arranged on the grass with Boulder's signature precision, and Garrett walks with Ruth to her seat in the front row and holds her hand through the whole ceremony. Smoke officiates. This surprises everyone and surprises no one. He had gotten ordained the previous November and told exactly nobody until the week before the wedding. He reads the ceremony in his quiet, even voice, and the words carry to every corner of the yard without him raising it, because that is how Smoke has always worked, finding the register that reaches people without effort. Lily wears a dress the color of mourning. Owen looks at her the way certain men look at things they know they are lucky to have, not with possession, but with gratitude. She says her vows looking at him directly, the way she has always looked at things that matter, without flinching and without looking away. After the ceremony, Blackjack gives a toast that begins with a story about Ghost in a bar in Reno, and ends with something that makes Ruth press her face into Garrett's shoulder for a moment, not from sadness, but from the specific fullness of a moment that contains everything at once. Boulder dances at the reception. Nobody knew he could dance, and he is not going to explain when or how he learned, and Lily films 17 seconds of it on her phone and watches it privately many times over the years that follow. Lily and Owen's son is born in the spring 2 years after the wedding. They name him Cole. Not Daniel, because Daniel is Ghost, and Ghost is something specific, and she wants the name to be her son's own, but Cole, which carries the family without asking the boy to carry more than a child should carry. She brings him to the clubhouse when he is 3 weeks old. Boulder holds him with hands that have rebuilt engines and opened doors that did not want to open and reached down into emergency situations and done every kind of hard, practical work, and he holds this baby with those hands, as if everything he has ever done has been practiced for the specific delicacy of this. Wrench makes faces. Blackjack leans down to the baby and says in a tone that suggests this is serious information, "Your grandfather was the best storyteller I ever knew. You are going to hear a lot about him. Pay attention." Smoke looks at Cole for a long time without speaking. Then he looks at Lily. Then he looks at the wall of the clubhouse where the photographs are Ghost, in his permanent laugh iron, in a newer photograph, that the chapter added to the wall after January, the two men side by side in their frames. He says quietly, more to himself than to the room, "There it is." Cole grows up the way children grow up, in families that know how to hold them with room to be himself and enough history to know where he comes from. He spends weekends at the clubhouse in Reading, learning the same things his mother learned: the engine language, the patience, the way that things which seem separate are almost always connected if you follow the thread far enough. Boulder Older now moves more slowly but loses nothing essential. He teaches Cole what he taught Lily about listening to what a machine is trying to tell you. Cole is a different learner than his mother, was less patient with the abstract, more interested in the immediate. And Boulder adjusts his approach without making it obvious, which is a teaching skill that does not come from training, but from paying attention to the specific person in front of you. Wrench teaches him to think in systems. Blackjack gives him the ghost stories, the full archive, now decades of accumulated memory that Blackjack has been tending like something that needs to be kept alive, parceling them out with the same deliberate care he used with Lily, because he understands that the stories are not just entertainment, they are inheritance, and inheritance deserves to be given properly. Smoke gives him books. He has never stopped. The books change as Cole changes, the same way they change for Lily, starting simple and getting harder as the boy becomes ready for harder, and Smoke chooses each one with the same quiet intentionality with which he does everything, the right story at the right time. On Cole's 16th birthday on a Saturday in October that is cool and clear, in the way October in Northern California can be when it decides to be beautiful about it, Boulder takes him out to the highway. They ride north on Route 101, picking up the coast at Willits, following the road where it climbs above the ocean. Boulder knows every curve of it by now, has ridden it more times than he could count, but he does not rush the drive. He rides at the pace of a man who understands that certain journeys are not about the destination. He stops at the turnout north of Fort Bragg. Cole pulls up beside him. They get off the bikes and walk to the guardrail, and Boulder shows him the stake in the ground. The leather strip, more weathered now than when Lily saw it, but still there, still tied, still marking the place. Cole looks at it for a while. "This is where my grandfather saved Iron's life," he says. "Right here," Boulder says. "The leather has been here longer than you have been alive. Iron put it there after Ghost died. Lily found it when she came back to take care of Iron at the end." He looks at the ocean below, gray-green and permanent, making it sound against the cliff. "Some places deserve to be marked," he says, "so you do not forget what happened there. So the road does not just become a road." Cole nods. He looks at the leather and then at the ocean and then at the road stretching away in both directions, empty in the October morning. "Did he regret it?" Cole asks. "My grandfather, leaving the road." Boulder is quiet for a moment. Not the quiet of someone who does not know the answer, but the quiet of someone giving the answer the space it deserves. "No," he says, "because of your mom, because of you." He looks at the boy beside him, the dark eyes, the set of the jaw, the quality of the attention that is so familiar it makes his chest ache with something that is not quite sadness and not quite joy, but lives in the territory between them. He gave up the road, and he got everything else. And everything else turned out to be more than enough. Cole looks at the leather strip once more. Then he straightens up and looks out at the ocean. "I want to come back here sometime," he says, "with my mom." "Good," Boulder says. "She will want that." They stand there in the October morning for a while longer. Two people on a road above the ocean, one old and one young. The bikes behind them, the sound of the water below the sky, the particular blue of a California day that has decided to be completely itself. Then they get back on the bikes. They ride south together in the morning light, the road following the cliffs, the ocean wide and gray to the west, the mountains rising to the east, the world enormous and particular around them, full of roads that lead somewhere and roads that lead nowhere, and all the ways a person learns eventually to tell the difference. That evening, Lily sits in the living room of the house in Milwaukee with Owen reading beside her, and Cole not yet home from the day's ride, and she takes the old photograph from the shelf where she keeps it and looks at it in the lamplight. Her father mid-laugh arm around Iron's shoulders, the cigarette behind his ear, young and alive and entirely himself. She traces the edge of the photograph the way Iron used to trace it, the same unconscious gesture, the same quality of attention, and she understands for the first time that she learned this from watching him, that this small thing, this thumb moving along a border, is something he gave her without knowing he was giving it. She thinks about the diner, about being 9 years old and shaking and walking across the floor anyway, about the way Iron's voice broke on that first sentence, about the photograph Smoke had carried for years in his wallet, waiting without complaint for a day he hoped would not come. She thinks about the highway and the leather strip in Boulder's face in the garage doorway when the engine caught and Blackjack's voice full of stories that kept her father alive in a different way than memory alone can manage, and Wrench's fraction diagrams that became a career that let her spend her days doing exactly what she was built to do. She thinks about all of it. Of the whole long length of it from that October Sunday to now, from a 9-year-old girl with holes in her sneakers to a woman with a patent and a son and a husband who builds things that last, and the thread running through all of it, unbroken the thread, her father tied at one end with a shaking hand, 3 weeks before the end, and the men in the diner held at the other. She puts the photograph back on the shelf. She looks at it for one more moment. "We are okay, Dad," she says. "The way you say something to someone you are certain can hear you regardless of the distance. We are really, truly okay." The lamp makes its small circle of light in the living room. Outside, the November dark has settled over Milwaukee the way it always does, quietly and completely. And somewhere on a highway in California, a strip of leather tied to a rusted stake still marks a place on a cliff above the ocean where a man once held on and did not let go. And somewhere in a garage in Reading, a motorcycle sits under its tarp, smelling of oil and leather and decades of careful tending. And somewhere in the dark, the chrome of bikes parked in a row catches what light there is and holds it, waiting for Sunday morning, waiting for the engines to turn over and the road to open up ahead, the way it always has, the way it always will, as long as there are men who understand what the road is really for. Not escape, not freedom in the way people who do not understand it mean the word. Something quieter and more permanent than either of those. The knowledge that you are not alone on it, that somewhere behind you, keeping pace, are the people who showed up, the people who remembered, the people who kept the promise.